Okay, so we're going to work a few more problems from the solving portion of this. So we're going to go ahead and go with G. Problem G says it's going to be 1/2 x minus, 1/2 m plus 7 minus 1/4 m less than or equal to -5. So we're going to go ahead and work something like this out. So again, this is G. So that's going to be 1/2 m. Alright, so remember that even though we have an inequality, we can still set this up the same way as regular equations, so we would still draw that line down, the equal sign. Now, right now, some of us maybe don't like the fraction, so we have the 1/2 and the 1/4. We're going to go ahead and see if we can change those fractions into decimals. So the 1/2, we're going to go ahead and multiply, or sorry, not multiply, but just, if you go ahead and type it into your calculator, which I guess I can teach you guys how to type it into your calculator. On your calculator page, you would just type in 1 divided by 2, and it gives you 0.5. Or if you do alpha y equals enter and you do 1/2, this one will give you 1/2. So then you have to go to the math. So you have to hit the math key. It pulls this up, and then you have to go to decimal, and that's all you have to do. Hit decimal, and you get the 0.5. Right, so this we can change to 0.5 m plus 7 minus, and then the negative 1/4, we can change that to 0.25 m less than or equal to -5. Alright, from here we can go ahead and combine our like terms just like last time. So I'm going to go ahead and put my m's together. So remember that the negative sticks to that second m, so we have 0.5 m and then we have negative 0.25 m. Again, they're on the same side and they're the same letter, so I can put them together. So we're going to go ahead and combine like terms. 0.5 plus negative 0.25. You want to make sure that you're typing that in correctly. 0.5 plus negative 0.25 gives me 0.25. So we have 0.25 m. Everything else that we did not touch goes down. So the plus 7 that we didn't touch, this thing right here is going to go down. Plus 7. And then this thing on the other side that we didn't touch is going to go down, -5. Make sure that you keep your inequality the whole way through. Alright, now that we're here, again, I always like to make sure that I label one of my side variables, so that's going to be V for variables. This side then is going to be numbers. Again, if you're curious as to why I label this side variables, is because I have one variable here already. I don't have any variables over here, so it wouldn't make sense to make this side my variables. Since my variables can stay on the variable side, I'm going to go ahead and cover that up. I need to get rid of the plus 7, so I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to subtract 7. That's terrible, 7. Subtract 7. So then that means that I can subtract 7 from this side. Positive 7, negative 7 are going to create a 0 pair. Over here we have -5 minus 7. Make sure that you guys are plugging that in once again correctly, because a lot of the times that's where our mistake happens when we have negatives. But that's going to be -5 plus -7. Right? We're combining our like terms. We're combining those two numbers together, so we need to add them together. It's going to give me -12. And then the 0.25 m that we didn't touch, this, I guess you can call it kind of like this turn. It's going to come down. There it is, 0.25 m. Now my last step is to get the m completely by itself, so I'm going to divide by 0.25. So I get that m is less than or equal to -24. Sorry, not -24, -48. So there's my equation. Alright, so that was G. We're going to go ahead and work H, and then we'll work I. So for H has 0 equals -3.5 W plus 2 plus 5W plus 10. Alright, so this one's a little strange just because of the way that it's set up. We still draw that line down the equal sign. That should still be your first step. Now the only thing here is that this side has a 0, right? And so maybe we haven't worked with something like that before. Now let's focus on what we can work with or what we have done before in the past. Right, we've already combined our like terms, so let's go ahead and do that same thing again. Again, on the same side I have that negative 3.5w and I have a positive 5w. Right, so I have both of those things here. So I'm going to go ahead and put both of those things together. Again, I'm going to combine like terms on your calculator. What that looks like is all you do is just add them together. Make sure that you're not subtracting 5 and subtracting 5 because that moves it to the other side of the line. Again, that's why we draw that line. So this is going to be negative 3.5 plus 5, which gives me positive 1.5. And then make sure that you keep that w with that term, so 1.5w. Other two things that I can combine on this side are going to be that 2 and that 10, again because they're just regular old numbers. They can also go together. Again, combining like terms, all that means is just 2 plus 10, which is going to give me 12, and it's going to be a positive 12, so I can put a plus in between those. The 0, I never did anything with it, so I'm actually just going to go ahead and bring that down. And now I have 1.5w plus 12. You know, what I can do now is it doesn't matter which side I label variables, which side I label numbers. I'm going to go ahead and label this side variables and this side numbers. Again, it doesn't really matter which side you label which, but if I label this side variables, then that means that I need to cover up the variable. The variable gets to stay. The number, that 12, needs to make sure that it goes to the other side over there. So we have a plus 12. To get rid of a plus 12, we want to do minus 12. And yes, even though we have 0, we can still set this up the same way. That becomes a 0 pair. 0 minus 12 or 0 plus negative 12 is going to give me negative 12. Equal to, this is going to come down 1.5. Alright, so we have negative 12 equals 1.5w. My last step is always to divide by the coefficient, which in this case is going to be 1.5. So we have that w equals, I need to type this in, negative 8. Again, I think I've already kind of said this step quite a few times, but remember the 1.5 over the 1.5, that becomes a big 1. That's where the w comes in. And then this is what I type into my calculator, negative 12 divided by that, which is going to give me that negative 8. In whichever way you write it is correct. And then the last problem that I said we were going to work was going to be I, or at least for solving. The last one that we're going to work is going to be I. So I is negative parentheses x plus 3 plus 3/4 x equal to negative 5. Okay, so there's my equation. Now, we know that we have to distribute because we see our problem, we see the equation. Now, here's the thing, is that a lot of us don't know exactly what to distribute. So we see the parentheses, we know we have to distribute something, but we don't know what. Then we see this minus sign right here. Alright, in algebra you're never going to see it, but there's always going to be if you see a minus sign next to the parentheses, there's always going to be an understood 1 in there. And so in algebra they're never going to write that in, but we have to understand that we can write it in ourselves. Right? So once we write that in ourselves, then we can distribute. When we distribute, we're distributing the 1, but not just the 1, the minus sign sticks to the 1, and we're actually going to be distributing negative 1. So we're going to be multiplying all of these by negative 1. So negative 1 times x gives me technically negative 1x. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as negative 1x for now. Negative 1x. Negative 1 times a positive 3 is going to give me a negative 3. And then everything else that I didn't touch during this distribution step I'm going to bring down. Again, here's where a few of us make mistakes. We see the x and we see the x and we might want to say, okay, plus 1x plus 1x. Remember that you can't do that because that takes it to the complete opposite side. Since they're already on the same side, I can go ahead and combine my like terms, which if you kind of haven't already, 3 over 4 is going to also reduce to 0.75, so I guess we should have done that first. I could have rewritten that as 0.75x. Whenever I put these together, I get negative 0.25x. Again, putting them together just means adding them together, negative 1 plus 0.75, 0.25x. The negative 3 that we didn't touch comes down, and the negative 5 over here comes down. Make sure that if you can, give yourself enough room to work so that you don't miss any negatives coming down, and give yourself plenty of space in between the equal sign and the number to fit in that negative. Now we can go ahead and say that this side is our variables, this side is our numbers. Again, because this side already has the one variable that we want to stay, right? My variable, my x. So I'm going to go to cover that one up because that can stay. I need to get rid of this minus 3, so I'm going to say plus 3 plus 3. 3's are going to cancel. Negative 5 plus 3 is going to give me negative 2. And then this is going to come down. It's going to be negative 0.25x coming down. From here we can divide by negative 0.25x, or sorry, just negative 0.25. Divide this side by negative 0.25. And we get that x is equal to, again, this whole thing, the negative, the point, and the 25, that whole thing becomes a big 1. Right, and that's where we get just the x from. On this side we have negative 2 divided by 0.25, which is going to give me a positive 8. Again, you can just type that into your calculator, negative 2 divided by negative 0.25, and you should get positive 8. Alright, with the next video we'll go in and we'll start tackling some of the other problems. That was a lot of solving, I know, but some of us still need help with some of the solving.